Today, we're going to be going over some routes that all wide receivers need to learn. So the first route we're going to be going over is a throw by 10-yard out. So we're going to play this thing full speed, and then we're going to break this thing down. So this is an example of a throw by move at the top of a route when we're not able to stack a defender, and he is right on my inside hip. So let's break down when we would use this and how we can use this. So pre-snap, it all comes down to your pre-snap read as a wide receiver. We got pre-snap reads just like how a quarterback has pre-snap reads, but ours is a little bit more simplified. We're looking at the DB, and we're looking for three specific things. Number one, we're looking for his coverage. Does it look like he's in press man? Does it look like he's in catch man? Off man? Does he look like he's in zone? In this case, he's in press man. Second thing we're looking for, what is his shade or what is his leverage? So he's outside shade, which means he has outside leverage. The reason why we want to look for that is because that tells me what he's trying to protect. So he does not want me to go to the outside, and he wants to force me to the inside, where likely in a real game scenario, he has some safety help. And then last but not least, I want to look for the distance between me and him. Is he right up on the line of scrimmage, or is he maybe 2 yards away? Because that's how I can structure my release and structure my route to a hole. So if I have him at outside shade press like this, then we know that I'm not going to be able to release outside. And I have to run a 10-yard out. Releasing outside is obviously the easier path, but I should be able to take an inside release and still get separation on an outside breaking route. So what we do is off the line of scrimmage, we give this little jab fake to the outside with our back foot. The whole reason we give this jab fake, and literally all that is in your stance, is you take this front foot. I call this a prep step, but literally it's just like it's literally like you pick your front foot up and put it down so you could push off of this foot so your back foot can step a little bit wider and jab and threaten his leverage. The reason why we want to threaten his leverage, that's the best way to get a DB to move. Make him think you were trying to run where he does not want you to go, which is to the outside. So that gets him to move, and we take that inside release. Now, anytime I have man-to-man coverage, my goal is to always stack this DB, which means have him trailing my back hip, running behind me, so I give a move at the top of the break, give a fake inside, give a head fake inside, so he goes, and then I got space to the outside. But if I am not able to do that, that is when this throw-by move comes into play. So let's say maybe the DB's faster, maybe he took a good angle, whatever the case may be. I got to push vertical all the way up to my break point, and at the break point, the quarterback expects me to get out. When it's 10 yards and I got to run a 10-yard out, I got to get out at 10, especially when it's man-to-man coverage. So at the break point, we have to sit my hips down and I have to drop. It's very, very important when we're doing this throw-by move that I got to drop violently. I got to sit my butt down. I want to get to a 90-degree angle as quickly as I can. And when I do that, I want to put the hand closest to the DB on the back of his elbow, back of his shoulder, or back of his hip if I'm close enough. And when I do decide to drop my hips, I swat him by. That's what gets him a little bit off balance. And now, because I didn't force the outside release, I gave the quarterback a ton of space to throw me open. Some of you at the very beginning of this might be thinking, well, coach, why wouldn't I come off the ball and try to give him some type of fake inside, then work to take this outside release so I could just cut and go? Because that wouldn't, well, one, the DB wouldn't allow that, because that's his leverage. But two, we're going to get squeezed to the sideline. Guys, if he's outside leverage, he is taught to protect that leverage. So if I force it and he gets hands, and let's say I do get outside of him, but I start my route on the hash and I'm cutting like on the numbers, that's horrible spacing, and the quarterback will not give me a ball. On an outside breaking route, like an out route, whether it's at 5, whether it's a 10, a corner route, a comeback, you got to give the QB room to lead you. If you don't, he's not going to throw it because the sideline is an extra defender. So first route we need to know is this throw by 10-yard out route versus outside shade press. Now, next example that we are going to be talking about here is from A.J. Brown in a live game situation. Now, before we get into this though, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you guys would like a daily workout schedule that you can follow to work on some of the different things that we cover in this video, check out that very first link in the description below for our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. What you'll get access to, guys, is 8 weeks of daily on-field workouts for receivers and 8 weeks of gym workouts for wide receivers. We break down the exact sets and reps you should do. We give you video examples of each drill so it's easy to understand. It works on the exact type of movements we discuss in this video. And then we give you wide receiver gym specific stuff to help with speed, explosiveness, agility, quickness, the work. So guys, very first link in that description below if you would like our Elite Wide Receiver Training Package. Let's get back to this video. So now, next thing here that we're going to talk about from A.J. Brown is something called a diamond release slant. So the reason why they call it a diamond release is because you take off at the angle of a diamond. Like if I was drawing a diamond right here, I would draw two 45-degree angles, and then I would connect them over the top, right? So that looks like a diamond essentially, right? So that 45-degree angle is what we're trying to do off the line of scrimmage. Now we're going to explain the reason why we would do that. This also is involved with a throw-by move, very, very similar to the 10-yard out, because again, receivers, we have to be physical. So let's play this thing full speed, and then we'll break it down. So it's 3 hard steps at this DB's outside hip and outside shoulder to flip him open. So let's talk about why we would do that. So if I come up to the line of scrimmage, we're in press, right? DB's lined up inside shade press. Remember, we're looking for three things: coverage, leverage, distance. So coverage looks like it's man. Leverage, he's inside, and he's about like a yard away from me. Okay, cool. I got to run a three-step slant. Now, let's say I had to run a post route. It would be just like that 10-yard out that we talked about, but flipped. Or let's say it was a dig route. Let's say I had to run like a 10 to 12-yard dig route, and I had inside shade press. Okay, cool. What I could do is I could give him a hard jab to the inside, try to move the DB, take the outside release. My goal is to stack him and give him a move. Because again, I can't just give a fake outside and then try to slip inside because this DB's leverage is inside. He's going to protect it, get hands, and he's going to squeeze me to the inside. Even if I get off of him or even if I get a little bit of space, the spacing of the entire play is going to be off. I'm going to be running into my slot receiver, or if you're a slot, you're going to be running into your offensive line. So we got to keep spacing. So we got to take the outside release if he gives us that by being inside shade press. Now, since it's a post, I have some time to actually work to stack him. If I can't stack him and he's right on my hip, I would take my arm, put it on the back of his shoulder, slip under, and throw by. But my goal is to stack. Now, if I have to run a slant route and it's only a three-step slant, I don't exactly have the time to jab him inside and try to stack him over the top and then break. I don't have the time. I only got 3 steps. So what you would want to do is you would want to try to flip his hips open with something called a diamond release, right? This would be the same. If you had to run a post route and this DB was sitting like 7 to 8 yards off inside shade, you wouldn't try to stem him, outside release, and then stack him, and you only have like 3 yards to be able to stack. What you would do is you would go right at his outside shoulder, right at his outside hip. The goal is to get him to flip open so I could slip underneath him. If your route is at the depth of where the DB is at, that is when you automatically have to slip underneath them and throw by. So that's where this diamond release comes into play. So on this diamond release, we're taking 3 hard steps. So that's step number 1, that's step number 2, that's step number 3. And on step number 3, we have to put the brakes on. That's when you use the hand closest to the DB to swat by on the shoulder, back of the hip, back of the elbow. Those are the 3 points of control, and then we slip under. When I take these 3 steps, guys, this is how you would run a slant route versus inside shade press. When I take these 3 steps, it's got to be a vertical. Everything's a fade until it's not a fade if you want this DB to open up. So I got to run hard, I got to run with long strides, and I got to make sure that my hips and my shoulders are saying that I'm running a vertical breaking route. And that will get that DB to open up so we could create some space underneath. So that's a great example of a diamond release slant. Now, next route you need to learn as a wide receiver is a slide release slant. So this is a way to kind of change the tempo on this DB, get him a little anxious, but still accomplish the same things. Now, when would we use this? That's what we're going to discuss here. So this is a clip here from 5-star wide receiver Brandon Innes. At the time, is 5-star in high school. Now he plays for Ohio State. This is a great example of a slide release. So he comes all by, slides, gives a move to the outside, gets the DB to jump, and wins on the slant. So guys, it's really honestly the same exact concept as the diamond release. We have inside shape. It's just a different way to do it, right? Like I'm talking about routes that you can run, but as a receiver, you got to understand there's multiple ways to run like multiple different routes, right? There's multiple ways to run different situations. Like again, just because you have a slant route doesn't mean you run it the same way every single time. A lot can change that, whether maybe it's an RPO, whether maybe it's a quick game throw, that plays a factor into your release that you choose. So let's say it's a slower developing play, right? Let's say the quarterback is doing like a zone read fake where he's faking the handoff to the running back. He's reading an outside linebacker, and we have the slant essentially replacing the linebacker. We could take a little bit of time with my release. I don't necessarily need to do that real quick diamond release and go. So I could slow things down. But the concept of the release, what I'm trying to accomplish and how I get separation stays the same. We still want to attack this DB's outside shoulder, still want to attack his outside hip, but we're just doing it a different way. So a slide release, the first part of this slide release from Innes, and you could take that, remember in the very first example of that wide receiver with outside shade press and we had to run a 10-yard out, we took that prep step with my front foot where it was just a jab and you push off of it. You could do that, but Innes does something called a kick step here, which is where you take your back foot and you kick it behind your front foot. All that does is load up your hips so you could spring to the outside on this slide and attack his shoulder and hip like vertically, right? So this like slide, this tempo slide to the outside. Now, you see all the best wide receivers in the NFL use variations of this. Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, what they will do is they will do something called a slide and go or a slide and jab release and go back inside. So Devontae Adams, let's use him as an example because he uses it all the time. What does he do? He'll get a DB who's inside shade and let's say he's got to run a fade. He's probably the best route runner of all time at the slant and the fade. right? So what he'll do is he'll come off the ball, he'll hesitate to the outside, DB sits because he's thinking a slant's coming, and then bam, we just take off and go run the fade, right? So now when we actually have to run a slant, maybe this DB's seen it before, maybe in a real game scenario, he's seen it on film, we come off the ball, we use that kick step, we slow down the tempo, and it's almost like a shuffle slide. That DB gets a little anxious and converts to the outside, bam, I throw that cut to the outside, slip back underneath and go. So now I have spacing on it. I didn't force an inside release versus inside shade press on a slant, and I got separation. So remember, guys, how we get separation, like conceptually, attacking the outside shoulder, outside hip, differs. How we get separation conceptually, attacking the outside shoulder, outside hip, stays the same, but the releases we choose can differ based on situations and based on what you're comfortable with, right? Maybe you hate the diamond release and you like the slide release maybe a little bit more. You may have to go with a little bit faster paced tempo when we have a first read route where maybe it's not an RPO or maybe not a slow developing play. But guys, the concepts stay the same. The releases can differ. Let's play this again full speed. Great example of a slide release slant here from Brandon Ennis.